Hey, how you doing? How's everybody doing right now? All right, let's get in. Oops, nope. I have to minimize that. Let me just make sure we're still streaming. Perfect, we're still streaming. Let's board edit. Let's get this board edited. Then we'll read the section really quick. Let's see that. All right, perfect. Okay. Still playable. Okay. This is what the session is. We're in chapter 3 still. Little tactics, that's what it's called. And this is the a subsection. So there's chapters and then there's subsections. This is a subsection. It's called one move further. There's a second kind of little tactics. This one is also positional in purpose, but uh, it's not non-forcing. So it's positional in purpose, but it's not non-forcing. A move of this kind doesn't threaten anything, but it needs a tactical justification to make it playable. It comes about most commonly when a master sees a candidate move he'd like to play. Often it's a move he'd love to play to improve his position considerably. But it seems to fail for a simple reason, such as putting a pawn on or a piece on pre. The remedy is to look one move further. One move further. You try to find a tactical shot that makes the position a candidate playable move. And it's like so what happens is sometimes these moves that we're like we can do this, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, the piece has to be put on pre, the pawn may get captured, all this stuff might happen. But if we look one move further, the move actually works, even though we have to sacrifice a piece and it's on pre, which means it could be captured. And that's what makes positional sacrifices playable. All right, let's do it. Ah, that way. I pushed the wrong one. There we go. Okay, let's see if I got this right. Okay. All right. Perfect. Now we got it. Okay, perfect. This was a game, and it says white has more space and more targets, but black can't castle kingside because he would lose his h pawn and likely his king as well. But black can put up a fight by maneuvering his king to e4. Oh, sorry, by maneuvering not his king, his knight to e4. He's not ready to do that immediately because knight c5. Let's actually put the move in. What's actually played by white is c5 exclam. So I just wanted to show you right here. Oh, yeah. Black would like to play c5 here. Sorry, black would like to play c5 here. This is the idea, c5. But what would happen is knight takes f5 exclam, followed by bishop takes c5, or c5, winning a pawn. Or what could also happen is the knight could come in too. So that's a playable move. And so that's the idea, is this tactical motif could actually come into play with knight coming to here, knight coming here, and then bishop takes the knight. And that's the idea. With that in mind, white turned a merely advantage position into a nearly winning one. White did that by playing c5 exclam. What's protecting the pawn? What's protecting the pawn? What is it? Tactically, queen takes c5 is crushed, is being crushed. So what happens is black actually plays a really strong move, a b1. What happened here? Oops, sorry, that's not black. Black played knight f8. But if this is what could possibly happen if queen takes c5. What would be played at this point would be knight takes e6. Black is on slightly firmer ground if he takes with his knight. But this is a tragic position. It's almost too late here, because if you try like queen back here, a piece drops off the entire board of the planet. So if the knight takes on c5, a to c1 pins the knight to the queen, and if rook, it threatens rook takes c5, and then again knight takes e6. And black's actually lost at this point. So black tried knight f8, tried to kind of avoid that and potentially hold on to the. If you notice, black sees white's idea of this tactical motif right here set up. So black actually retreats back to guard e6, so that queen takes c5 is a playable move at that point. Some this is what Andrew Celsus says. Some amateurs might consider c5 to because they see how taking the pawn brings swift. He says punishment. I say a swift problem for white, but it's actually not a problem for white. White has that beautiful tactical setup that just like basically black is lost at that point. It's not. It's even worse than that because the game is over at that point. But white doesn't expect to win that way. He expects just to keep improving his position as in the game, which went knight f8. That's what black did. White played a really interesting move. Rook A B1, and you're thinking, whoa, hello, what are you doing? Aren't you just letting the pawn fall off the entire board? Isn't this just like, what are you doing, friend? It's like you're hanging a pawn. Not so, actually. This is a very, very strong move. The c pawn still isn't hanging. Surprisingly, we would think, wait, I could just grab that with the queen, right? Whoa, no, 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 no. You don't want to do that. Black actually plays this one move. We're going to play this one move here, so because it's actually a mistake, but I wanted to play this so we can go over some sublines here. So you have some sublines to go over. If black thought about grabbing this is such a problem. You still have kaboom move right there. Bam. There's no way to stop this basically big time move. It's a showstopper. That move is show stopping right there. And you get your pawn back plus interest. And what better investment than that? And then you're probably wondering, what makes A takes B1 a great move? A good move is that it sets up for the B pawn to B7 pawn to be taken. He would win. He would win for instance after knight G. Knight G. Let me make sure. Do I have this enlarged? Yeah. Sorry, knight G6. Black tries knight G6, queen, rook B6, knight E7, rook F B1, and then rook B8 to guard, queen F3 to take scope on the pawn 3 times. If H4 by black, then bang, rook takes B7. Or if knight if instead knight C6. Which is actually a mistake here. It's actually a mistake. Because then you can actually go smack, wham. And then if the pawn takes, kaboom, then the whole entire position just collapses off the entire board. And then now you have rook B6, and it's like, whoa. The A pawn is almost potentially lost. You have queen D1 that could be played, and then actually bishop that can go to H4, and then just totally it's pain and more pain. And so that's why even if knight D5 was played here, the same sitch happens. Knight takes F5, kazam right there, wham. And if pawn takes, then you just grab with the queen, and you're actually up one whole pawn here. And there's so many targets. You have this target for black, that target to take scope on. We even have that target. We have 4 targets that are potential in all of our positions. Superior, his bishop is basically entombed to not be able to do anything. And even if we decided to just trade off queens, we could potentially have a passed pawn, and the bishop's not ever getting out of its entombment, and this pawn will eventually fall on b7. So we'll actually be 2 pawns up, basically a winning game. So black tried to take advantage and try to remove some of the weaknesses, but every time once I gotta get a drink and then I'll talk to you right a second. Every time a pawn is moved, it can't go back, and it provokes another weakness. So now white has a weakness that he can take scope on through e6. The e6 pawn now is weak, and that could, if we take and then let's say bishop takes, you can now bring a rook, and it's basically attacking the king at that point, through into the king, which this allows the strong move, queen to f3. Surprisingly, we're not really worried about taking here because we want to sorry, I have to make it a dark thing here. We're not really worried about taking because that pawn will eventually come under fire, and it's not gonna be a really wonderful setup for black. Rook b8 for black to hold onto that pawn. Rook b6 now to take scope of the pawn. If takes, we actually have knight takes, which would fork the queen and bishop, and we would actually get a vital pawn at that point, a center pawn, and even if they took, our bishop would take, and then it would skewer. So like if they took here, black took here, we potentially can play knight takes, rook takes, check. Then if king comes up here, we can actually support the rook to come here, and then if the pawn took here, then you have bishop takes with a skewer on the rook and queen. There's a lot of play, lots and lots for white. And so rook b6 was an exclam move here. I know there's a lot of lines there. The game ended with f takes e5, knight takes e6, rook takes e6. Sorry, knight takes e6, rook takes e6, check. We also can win a pawn. King f8. F takes e5. King g8. And then the winning blow, queen to d5. And how do you stop this tactical motif actually from coming to pass? Because at this point they stopped here, and black basically resigned. Well, we can take it a tiny bit further. We'll put a square on it, which means only move. So we're just going to take it a tiny bit further. The game actually is slightly winning. So what I might do is take off the circle and do, not slightly winning, white is winning at this point. There's nothing that black could do they're lost. So you could potentially see king h7 here, potentially. And then what you'd have to be able to look at, and we're looking at it right now, you'd have to think about rook takes f5. And the idea then now is that rook rook takes h5 here. So you'd have to kind of play bishop. Actually, you can't even play that. Yikes. I think they're even lost at this point. I'm trying to find a good move for black. I really can't find one that doesn't lose at this point. Well, we could try, just saying to white, please take my rook. And white's going to say, no thank you, I will nicely decline. Then the king would say, walk right, let's say that they didn't see it, the king walked right into g8. You have this really strong move continuation. You have rook going to f8, or potentially maybe even better move than that. I missed this move here. This is a really strong, oops, not that, sorry, delete. It's actually this move is actually winning. I should have seen that. This is actually a total winning move. There's no real way. The queen's been cut off from the protection of f7. So the only move to stop mate is that, and then there lands mate. So the king can't play there. So that move's not playable. Potentially you can just walk into that move there, and then surprisingly you have a really strong move, rook h6. This almost, I think, deserves an exclam move here, because the only move that now can save the position is that, and you just land mate. There's no real way of stopping checkmate at that point. And that's why there was a resignation after queen d5, was there's no winning move. And even if you tried a secondary line like king f8, you still get hey, how you doing? You still get hit hard with rook takes f5. You can't play here, so you have to walk back, and now again you get hit by rook h6. Only way to stop it is queen f7 and then checkmate. So there's really no way after that move. It's basically black is done for. And it was a really straightforward move, queen to d5, and it's like, what? That's so strong, and it's not an exclam move, but it's such a strong move. It's like it's what they talked about. It's a tactical. It's considered a piece on pre, and it all started. This whole idea started with c5, just allowing a piece to be on pre, allowing a piece to potentially be sacrificed for a pawn, to be sacrificed for a winning position. Okay, we need to set up another one, and then we will go over that. And you know what? That what you just got there wasn't in the book, so we actually went over some lines. You'll be able to go over a little bit more than what was in the book, and you get to see why that move is winning. So I hope you do go over it and learn from our lines. And maybe if you see some line that's saving, find it. I didn't see any line that was a move that could save black from basically getting checkmated. But there might be a move that could be saving. And if you find it, that's excellent, because what that is showing is that you're putting in Team Chess Cruncher work to be able to spot a move that is winning that might have been overlooked at that one move, Queen D5. Okay. Let's do King G1. Okay. We gotta bring in all the pieces. Let's see, what do we got here? Perfect, perfect. We're good so far. Yay. Just want to make sure I have all the pieces in play. And the reason I didn't add castling was if you castle, your position's lost. So I didn't want you to go down the wrong route. I didn't add castling because there was no castling in the position, and I didn't want you to go down the wrong avenue of that. Okay, white. So we have it all perfect here. We'll put it right here. Okay, this is the next subsection of Little Tactics of the chapter, Little Tactics, Chapter 3. Little tactics can be difficult to appreciate because the change they bring about are so slight, such as a repositioning a lazy piece or opening a diagonal, unless you can be sure that the repositioned piece is on a better square or the diagonal will matter. The change may have no benefit or even it may backfire on your position. And so this position is what they're talking about. For example, here we have to get the players put in. This is Bonvinic. Nineteen 1966. Bonvinic. White to move, so we're going to look at it from White's perspective. Let me get a drink first. I'll be right there. Okay. Let's see how a world champion uses a little tactic. White to move here. The first move that catches the eye of most players is the forcing A5 move for white. Or Rook D1 forcing move for white. For two reasons. It develops a piece and naturally defends. We're going to play the move that was played in the game so that we can go over some of these lines and talk about them. What was played in the game was Bishop G5. But these are the forcing moves that we would look at. is a5, which attacks the bishop. Rook f d8, or actually rook d1, which attacks a knight and develops a rook to an open file. What's better than that, right? The natural defense is rook takes c4, allows white to post a light squared bishop on a strong diagonal, a2 to g8 diagonal. So, but a master would want more out of the position, as he'd see back here. Master would want more out of the position. As we'll see in the next chapter, White's chances are already so good that he should check out another developing move with tempo. And the move that was developed with tempo was bishop to g5 at this point. This is a move with tempi. And a tactical justification for this, if queen takes g5, which was actually played, knight takes d6, and now the knight is well placed. It's in the center, and basically he's better. White slightly has improved his knight, and it's still a closed position where knights are better than bishops. So what could actually come to pass after this move here is, let me see, I just want to make sure. Okay, takes, after queen takes on g5, knight to e3 exclam could actually be playable at this point. I know this seems, what are you doing? And then knight d5 with a slightly positional better. Yes, you're down material, but remember this is still closed, so you can actually potentially be down a whole piece and in a closed position because there's not a lot of dynamic. It's more static. You can hold the position. So we've looked at so far so good, but there are still at least two more questions to ask. The first is, how good is queen takes g, and then knight takes d6? Has white improved his chances since the position in the previous diagram? Let's take a look. That's the question that Andrew Soltis is asking. Let's see here. He has a knight on d6, and if the attacked black's rook goes to c7, rook c7, black's bishop is trapped after a5 exclam. The bishop is trapped after this point here. White can take aim on the target after this too, of if he doesn't like that move. Bishop to c4 is also an exclam move too, because this takes scope. We don't have to force the a pawn. We can also play bishop takes or knight takes and pick up a whole piece. Like if a6 played here, we could actually play knight takes f7, with a threat of check. So the king would actually have to move to, actually, wait a second. Well, I guess this is losing, isn't it? Wow. So queen takes e, and then knight checks, and there's really no way of the loss at that point. Trying to figure out maybe king f8 is probably the best continuation in that line, and then a5 comes, and the bishop's trapped. The light squared bishop is actually better developed now, and after bishop takes, rook takes, and you're up a whole piece. So there's pressure with that move. If bishop moves, then there's rook f8, and bishop to d5 could actually also be a playable move here, which would make the bishop much better. You have c4, and you still have a5. And so still much better. The rook really can't move, because if the rook went to c8, the knight would basically take it off the board. And if a6, then you actually have a kind of winning, you have a winning move here as well. You actually have a5. If the bishop went back, you have b6, and this picks up a whole exchange, and it's actually totally winning at this point. So there's really no way of holding the position together. Excuse me, let me get a drink of water. Actually, this is a good drink, sorry. Yummy. Okay dokie. Bishop g5. It's not enough. So if black tried f6 here, since he has no better response on than to retreat to e3, that is what happened in the game. So this actually happened in the game. So let's promote this. This actually happened in the game. That happened again, which the game continued with knight takes c4, knight takes c4, bishop takes c4 check, king h8. White has it won material or created a vulnerable pin, but he has improved his position considerably. He not only got his bishop to a good diagonal, but that diagonal was extended to black's it extended even to black's first rank, or seventh rank. See, we consider ours first rank. Their black's is a seventh, yes, but to them it's their first rank. So it's kind of in perspective. White proceeds to squeeze black's minor pieces with a5, bishop c7, and then rook f d1, knight f8, and then queen to a2 exclam. Stopping black's knight from coming via e6, white can visualize a mating attack by lining up his queen in front of the light squared bishop and threatening knight to or queen to g8 mate. With so little amount on the board, what happens is the rook just played rook takes d1 check, rook takes d1, and then rook d8 here. Rook takes d8, and then bishop takes d8. But after a6, pawn a6, and then b6, white's superiority has grown again. Because if you notice, black has just entombed his dark squared bishop. And so, and this is where the whole familiar role of tactics, the game-winning big tactic, comes into play. A good idea is to get the queen to d5, where it threatens the mate on g8, and as well as attacks the queen pawns. So one way of doing that is basically d8, so that you can come in and attack here. The queen wants to actually go there. So white plays queen e2, exclam here, and the bishop will try to retreat back, and the queen will try to come into c4 and then threaten a mate. So the bishop will try to come there and threaten mate there. So knight e6 was played, and then g4, which is a double attack on the knight, and that's actually an exclam continuation. Everything's with force right now. So knight c7 was played here to try to take advantage of the weak b5 pawn. Queen c8 is now with attack in threat, and potentially coming to b7 here, which is really strong. The point to appreciate here is that the key to white's victory was bishop g5. And f6, that one move tactical line created a concession that improved to be a huge weakness. Black did not have the majority time to improve. And after on move 2, after queen to e3, or bishop e3, and soon after, white had a positionally won game thanks to his additional forcing moves like a5 after the queen got to and the trades happened like this here, and then a5, bishop went back, rook is now attacking the knight, and then queen rotates, takes, and then takes, and then a5, and this is a winning position, because after b6 for black, the dark square bishop for black is basically not even there. There's no good moves, and the only piece that black can play with is a knight, and white has two active pieces. So that's what's important. And yep, okay, now we're going to be another sub topic inside of the chapter Little Tactics is called the tactical habit. The biggest obstacle to learning how to use little tactics is the mindset that tells you that tactics are used to attack. One way to rid yourself of this notion is to experiment, actually go through, actually to examine master games that have nothing to do with attack. So if you want to do tactics, look at tactics that have kind of like they develop, but they don't like win a piece. They're not attacking, but they're tactics that will help a piece get to a better spot. That's you can do that through master games or grandmaster games, and they're not always winning tactics. They're tactics that improve a piece. Um, you might choose games with quiet openings, such as a more positional line of the Queen's Indian, the French, the Nimzo Indian defense. After each move, try to find a tactical point. Don't rely on notation to point them out. Annotate practically the grandmasters. So try to annotate or verbalize to yourself if you're more you like to talk it out. Just basically look at the book. Say you set up the board if you're visual, or if you have a online account or something like that. You can go to analysis, get a game downloaded in PGN file, and then go over it. Or you can go, there's some websites that have games, and ask yourself what tactical motif would get a piece of that spot, and did the grandmaster, when the grandmaster plays it, why did they play it, and all these different things, and you'll improve. Okay, and after each move, try to find out a tactical point. Don't rely on notation. Practically, okay, regularly omit basically moves of key tactical points. They seem to think they're too obvious and unworthy of any commentation. So some of these small tactical moves, and you're wondering why they weren't talked about, are in some of the loaded games, why there was nothing on it. Some of the grandmasters basically are the people who are notating the tournaments will say this is so not big to this compared to this other tactic that we're not even going to write about it. But you might, my chess cruncher team, spot that small tactic, and it is important in the game, and you got to see it, and that is so cool that you're able to spot those. Don't expect every move that don't expect every move that's played to have a tactical subtext, but appreciate the way a master blends tactics and strategy together. Consider the next game that we're going to be going over is right here. I'll get it set up. Oops. Let us clear. Let's get our pawns all wonderfully set up. Almost forgot the king. Let's start out with the king first, and then we'll do the rooks. I find that doing the rooks actually also help. If you're setting up a position, I find setting up the rooks are a lot easier so that you don't get a misplayed. All right, perfect. One more. Oops, I gotta do one more knight. Okay, let's see here. All right. Okay, and it's white to play. So we'll make it part of, oops. Yeah, they're already castled, so I was blessed there. I forgot to put the castle thing in. Let me get the players' names put in here. Okay, it's good there. The name is good here. Oops, forgot an A on that player's name. Right there. There. Okay. Okay. Here we go. And you got to do white's position here, and there we go. And then we'll have this. There we go. Okay. The position of black's queen suggests it can be basically exposed to an attack by exposed by what could it be exposed? We don't mean white should be able to win the queen or even a pawn. Rather, he could try for some positional pluses like a superior pawn structure, or more space. The move that was played was e4 here. e4 was played. For a sample, he can drive the queen off of the diagonal by knight e1. Then the queen would go to c8. Bishop takes, and then queen takes. Then he can try to seize control of the center with e4 at that point. And that's a potential idea. Okay. Oh, right here, sorry. Then bishop, the line continues. Hold on, let me see. What did I... Oh, with e4. Yeah, after e4. Bishop b4. Exclam here. Intending bishop takes e4, and then queen takes, and then the queen wins the pawn on e4. So knight b5, a6, knight d6, queen c7. Oops, not c7, queen c6. There's rook d1, and then knight e8. the knight may, the bishop actually plays queen to bishop e7, so if the knight tried taking, e takes, then e5 actually is an exclam move, and it picks up a piece in this line. The queen has to retreat back, and then you can play bishop or knight takes. I probably would play bishop takes, bishop takes, and then knight takes, and you're up a whole exchange. This safeguards the threat. So, but white uses his tactical sense to enlarge his edge by playing e5 exclam. Knight h5, and then the bishop goes, yeah, I don't think so. Now the knight is almost trapped. They're one move from being trapped. g4 would trap the knight. So f5 was played here to stop g4 from being played. And the idea is if pawn takes, then the rook could take, and there'd be a triple attack on the knight. Knight e1 to attack the queen, and this is actually an exclam continuation too. So these are all. This is a really strong move. So if let's see here. Got it. If queen takes c4, this is actually a mistake here. But because of knight d2, double attacking the queen and the bishop, queen c7, and then bishop takes, queen takes, and then g4 traps the knight. There's no way this knight's going to fall. So the knight's trapped at this point. So the only way to safeguard that was with f5, knight e1, queen c8, and then pawn f4. And we're again in a positionally winning game for white, and it's really an interesting position because if the bishop trades on g2, the queen would swing over, and basically queen h5, h3 would come in trying to attack the knight. It's interesting, to say the least. Really interesting. This is an exclam move. Yeah, I'd give it an exclam move. There's a lot of threat to it. It has small tactical motifs to it, which gives a white an edge in space, and the pawn structure is greatly favored to his pieces. Yeah, so knight to a6 here. If queen takes c4, it's actually a complete blunder here. Because of queen, let me see here. Uh-oh, sorry, I'm a little too soon on this move. Bishop takes. Oops. Did I do it again? What did I miss here? queen, gotcha. Gotcha. If bishop takes here, queen takes G, which actually picks up a rook, and then queen takes C2 is actually a blunder here, or C4, because of knight takes A8, and you're up a whole rook, and it's a lost game at this point. So that's why that's why, let me see here. That's why queen takes G. And then knight to A6, so a way to guard the rook. And that gets promoted to the main line. Queen E2, which attacks the knight and protects the pawn at the same time. So G6 is forced, which weakens the position even more. Rook D1, Rook D8 to guard the pawn. Knight F3 here. Knight C7, and Rook D3, and then you're going to try to double Knight E8, and then Rook FD1 exclam. Rather than spending a tempo on B3 to protect the pawn, White had figured out that Rook FD1 is actually winning, so that's why D6 was played by Black. Black manages to liquidate his weakness with D6. But if Queen had played Queen takes C4 in this line, Rook takes D7 leads to an endgame edge for White in this line. So he didn't do that. He played D6. But thanks to White's little tactic, White actually played B3 here to keep this pawn and everything in basically harmony. If let me see here. Hold on. We'll have to go back through. There's a small edge here that they want to talk about, but he had a substantial edge and eventually converted it to victory. So B3 was played. Yep. D takes E. D takes E5. Rook takes. Bishop takes. Knight takes E5. Bishop F6. Queen F3. Rook B. Rook B8. And then knight to B5. You're probably wondering, why didn't the bishop just, grab this, right? Probably because of after pawn takes there, you the knight is actually worse placed now because there's no points for the knight to get into being optimally placed. It has to, this knight is really actually a bad knight. This knight here is bad. So that's why they just move the rook and then the knight b5. And now the knight's still bad. There's no point that the knight can get to here because the rook and the knight guard the point. And then if the knight comes here, you potentially could actually play knight in and basically pick up a rook. So you can actually play if knight c7, trying to trade off, you have knight d7, and you're actually winning an exchange. Let's see here. Let's go back. They were talking about how e4 was actually a winning line. They're saying that if e4, that potentially e5 could be played there later on with some moves that we talked about. E5 after the bishop moves, and then we have also later on we have bishop after the knight goes to h5. We have bishop e, and these moves are superior moves. They're not like tactical winning like what we have here. So this is what he says: count it up and you'll find more than half a dozen threats and minor piece tactics. Looking at games like this should deepen your appreciation of little tactics. Among opposing players like that do this is Vishy Anand, Vladimir Kramnik, Hikaru Nakamura, Magnus Carlsen. Regularly use little tactics to the fullness, and their games are a rich source of study materials. Among the older players whose games you might consider, there is Samuel Reddick, Rosinski, or some, I'm sorry, Mikhail Bonvinik, Anatoly Karpov. I'll spell this player out for you. Akiba Rubinstein. I'm not sure how to spell this one. It's say this one, Svetozar, and his last name, I believe, is Gligoic. And then Smyslov and Petrosian is also, those are the, if you want like the kind of ones before the modern players, these are the secondary ones, are the ones you can go over that do that. Yes, Petrosian, after one of Boris Spassky's World Champions matches with Petrosian, he told one of the other grandmasters, you should know Tigre is the first and foremost a super tactician, a superior tactician. So what he's trying to say is, in that one of the grandmasters, is that Petrosian knows how to take little tactics, even with his match with Boris Spassky. He knew how to take small tactics and maximize his position using that. Let's see what time it is right now. Oh, perfect. We'll call it on this, and then we'll pick up tomorrow with it's called happy accidents. Sometimes there's happy things. Sometimes we stumble upon a move. Our opponent accidentally sets up a tactic for us. I think that's what he means by the subtitle "Happy Accidents." What that means is our opponent may set up a tactic by accident or by happenstance, maybe a mistake, and we're able to implement it. Okay, then I will say adieu on that. I wanted to thank you for all participating, and I hope you learned that you know what. Sometimes we went over two sections. I will just take a look and I'll read. I think we went over one move further. So like this, the one, and we're just gonna do a small wrap up. One move further is you have to sometimes you could put a piece on pre as long as it gives you an advantage, winning, not always a winning advantage, but maybe a positional advantage that would later on you can maximize to a victory. The next one we went over was were baby steps. Little tactics that help maximize your position is always a wonderful thing to learn from. Like go over grandmaster games, or better would be to go over your games and find out the ones that you lost. If you can endure going over them again, it's hard to, and it's probably hard to think about either a mistake that you might have played or something like that. But there's a reason that that mistake happened, and you need to figure out why so that you can improve. And then we went over a third one. So we actually went over three. It's called tactical habits. And the one thing is to take a game, our positions that are like closed, and go over them and learn how small tactics, they may not be the biggest of tactics, could actually help your understanding improve. Okay. Well, with that, we have to remember what uh, Bruce Lee said is that you need to take what you know and be able to apply it and be willing to do something with it. But the main thing that we always have to keep in mind, as important as moves, tactics, and learning chess, the choice to receive the Lord Jesus as Lord and Savior of your life is as important as every move on the board. How it can change your position, that can change your life. Okay, and you know what? We have to remember the Team Chess Cruncher motto of hanging up your coats, hanging up your hats, sitting down and studying when most won't. Team Chess Cruncher does, and that makes all the difference. And I will tell you two things really quick, is that you have to treasure your victories. And the hardest thing to do, learn from your losses. And remember that mistakes do not define you. It's how you handle a mistake that defines you, my Chess Cruncher friends. Team Chess Cruncher. And remember, it even makes now the doors are opening wide when when Hannibal Smith says, even inside of a random position, there's always a plan. And when you find it, you get to say, I love it when a plan comes together. Okay, 2 thumbs up. Hoorah, be blessed. Go Team Chess Cruncher and keep having fun, improving, learning, and going over games and having fun and honoring the Lord. 2 thumbs up. Hoorah, be blessed, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye bye, Team Chess Cruncher. Hoorah.